Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
Hello, Jan. Hello from Vanuatu. So we're recording this podcast in Vanuatu. We've taken the whole family away, mother included, siblings, cousins, all of us, and it's interesting the family dynamics that are playing out. And for us, it's interesting because we're seeing it through the lens of the Myers-Briggs. So we have some of the cousins who are extremely organised and have an agenda and want to do all these different activities, and then there are other people who are just very present in the moment and just interested in what's in front of them, literally, like what they're eating, for example. So what that does, though, it really is an opportunity to see people and their gifts that are different. And, Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs, they had a book that was called Gifts Differing.
Yeah.
So our personality and the way in which we operate in the world are our gifts, and they are different. So it doesn't make them right, wrong, good or bad. They're just different. And I think that is a real legacy that they have made to this whole body of work.
And even so, as a people leader reflecting on that, just that mindset about everybody in my team has a gift for the greater success of the team, and to think in those terms.
Yeah.
Even when somebody's not performing to your expectations, there is something there that they have to give, and this is what great people leaders do: is they find that they find that gift.
Yeah, or they explore it, and if they can't explore it, then they move them out and ready for the next person who actually does want to deliver that gift as well. Yeah. All right. So let's have a look. What we're going to do is we're going to go through all the different types, so the extroversion, introversion, the different elements of the Myers-Briggs, and we're going to share with you what well-developed type skills look like and what underdeveloped or perhaps immature type skills are. And when we actually are going through this is an opportunity for you to just reflect. So am I using my strength in a way that is functioning, that is contributing, or because I'm perhaps stressed or overwhelmed, it's turned up too much, and so it's looking immature and dysfunctional. So let's have a look at the first one, and this is the extroversion. And extroversion, again, is around how you get your energy. So if I was to look at a well-developed extrovert, we would see someone who has a real active approach to their work. We would classify them as being quite dynamic, and this is a very beneficial gift to bring to a team, that active dynamic approach. Now, if it's underdeveloped, it could look like hyperactivity. And with hyperactivity, there's a little bit of tension there and a little bit of anxiety producing element. So not just from the person actually being hyperactive, but by people seeing someone in hyperactivity. So notice whether or not you are in that realm, and what you could see, you would see people breathing shallow, so from their upper chest, you would see them not being able to complete a full sentence, so running one sentence into another without completing it, and jumping from one topic to another in an erratic approach. Even though extroverts can go from one topic to another, there is usually a certain style to it that people can keep up with. But if it's turned up too much, it becomes too hyperactive and dysfunctional. Another way that you would see a well-developed type for an extrovert would be to bring breadth to a situation. And breadth meaning, there is a range of options that people could bring to a situation or a response. And if it's underdeveloped, you would see it as being quite superficial. So they wouldn't have that depth of understanding about all those different elements and variety.
Good. Okay, so let's have a look at introversion. Again, introversion, extroversion preference is about where I'm getting my energy from. And for an introvert who had, well-developed type skills, it's going to look like they have a very reflective approach to things. So instead of, as the extrovert, very active, moving forward, the introvert will reflect on what has happened, how they're feeling, the information that they've got in front of them. And that's going to come across as there's a bit of depth in that. Now, when it's underdeveloped, it looks like they're withdrawn and secretive. So because introverts don't readily share their experience, their internal ritual with the outside world, it can look withdrawn and solemn and, I'm not going to share this with you. But that's just a label that perhaps us extroverts have placed on the introverts. And the other thing that well-developed introversion is going to bring is depth to an event, to a situation, to information that they're using or sharing. And then with that depth it can come across as being very serious. Because you know so much about it, you can just focus on that information and you're going to look very, very serious and solemn. And if I was to give you a tip about how you might overcome that, it might be just to lighten up a little bit. It's not necessarily, throw in a joke, but be more interpersonal or smile. Use your body language in some way so that people don't, leave your conversations going, God, that was tough. That was a bit, solemn.
Even the words that you use can be quite definitive. So, for example, if it's wrong, perhaps you could use a different word around that. So, for example, if someone produced a report or whatever, as opposed to being wrong, there are some improvements.
Yeah. Or adequate first draft. That's from a feeler.
Very good.
Okay,
so let's have a look at the next element, and this is around the sensing and intuition, and this is all about the type of information that you know and like and trust. For a sensor, a well-developed type skill would be very practical. So they are good at seeing the relevant, and practical means that you can apply. Yeah, so you can apply pretty much straight away. Now, if it's underdeveloped, you could be looking at someone who is quite slow and dull in their approach, especially to certain questions that you ask them. So have a look at the energy, but also have a look at how they are responding to information. A well-developed sensor would also bring data. So very good at that, case study information that backs it up with technical expertise and data. Now, underdeveloped, it would look like they have a real narrow focus to the data that they bring. So could be quite nitpicky and have a really narrow scope.
Yeah, and so it's almost like they've just put the blinkers on and they've got lots of data, but it's just on this area instead of broadening it out. Yeah, that's good. Which leads to, let's have a look at intuition now, so again, this is about how we're gathering information. And so when we look at this preference, well-developed intuition is going to be imaginative. Well-developed intuition has such a rich imagination, can see lots and lots of possibilities. But with that, if it's underdeveloped, lots of possibilities can look a little bit careless, a little bit like, I don't care, I'm just coming up with all these ideas because I've got them there.
Right.
And so you want a little bit of discernment to go with your imagination. And that's what well-developed intuition will look like. And so with that, again, they bring that breadth of perspective, well-developed intuition, but when they don't bring perspective with the breadth, it could be unpractical and just like almost ridiculous and dreamy, and you're not making any sense to us. And so again, and when you consider that 60% of the population are sensing and 40% are intuition, the more practical that the people with a preference for intuition can make their ideas, you are going to get the S's across the line.
I know, and this is a real tricky part too, because if you want to be visionary and have a solution that no one else has thought of, you actually have to stretch the boundaries. And so for some people, they can see it as being impractical or dreamy. So it's the words that you use, it's the setup, and also maybe having that conversation is that this is my initial thought about this. I haven't thought of everything, but I wanted to share this with you.
And the other thing that I find sensors really respond to is if you can link it to something that they already know that actually sounds or looks or they've experienced something similar, then they can make that imaginative leap quite easily.
Yeah. Good. All right, so let's have a look at the next area of Myers-Briggs, and this is around the decision-making function, so the thinking and the feeling. And the thinking is all around making the best decisions, and they make it with logic and evaluation. So a thinker who has a really well-developed skill in this, they analyse situations very well. And when we talk about analysing a situation, they're good at, evaluating, so the pros and the cons in a very logic, pragmatic way. Now, turned up too much, they could be cold and uncaring, so they may not bring that other aspect to it. And so for those, if it is underdeveloped, you wouldn't see them asking questions, having empathy, offering or asking for support. So a well-developed thinking function would also look like the ability to bring consistency to a situation, because they're very fair, very logical, and very, driven,
objective.
That process, and very good at evaluating. That's where you have that consistency. Turned up too much, bringing that consistency and evaluating and analysing, it can come across as being overly competitive. And what we mean by overly competitive is right and wrong, all right? Because they are so consistent in the way in which they think, there is no opportunity to think a different way.
Yeah, because they're so logical. I'm more logical than you and I'm going to prove it. And that's when that competitive element starts to come out with the thinking types.
Yeah. So as we're going through this, again, just check in with yourself. You always check in with yourself. Am I seeing a little bit of that creep into my style and the way I'm operating, or do I see it creep into other areas in the team? And can I do something about it? So just notice that.
That's right. Which leads us to the next preference, which is the feeling preference. So again, this is how I tend to make decisions. So people who have preference for feeling are very affiliative. And they're people, basically. They like people, they like to be around people, they like people to grow and develop, and their well-being is very important. The other people's well-being is very important to them. Now, when this is underdeveloped, when people don't give you the acknowledgement that you feel that you should get, or that the relationship isn't what you thought it was, then you can get easily hurt if you have underdeveloped feeling function. Because people are so important to you, when they are showing you that you're not as important to them, you can get those feelings of being hurt. And so this is also something to think about in terms of, does that happen to me sometimes? What can I do about that? The other thing that feeling types bring to a situation is harmony. They are great at working out, where there's conflict or potential conflict, at trying to create that sense of harmony within a group, within a family. Always trying to bring people together. Let's have a discussion about it. Let's sort it out. And they won't do well when there is disharmony. And with that, again, if it's underdeveloped, it can come across as being overly sentimental and almost melancholy sometimes. And so, again, it's about being a little bit more objective because harmony isn't necessarily always the best. Conflict is good. Conflict can be good. It's part of life. It's the way that we deal with it. So harmony, whilst yes, we would prefer it,
it doesn't bring growth sometimes.
Great.
And I think with being over sentimental, that can come across as being indulgent in a really exaggerated way.
Yeah.
So again, notice whether or not these are elements that are coming into your operating style. So let's have a look at the last aspect of the Myers-Briggs, and this is your orientation to the outside world, how you organise yourself and your events. And we're going to have a look at judging. So when it's a really well-developed type, you're quite decisive. It looks like someone who is very clear, knows what they want, and then goes for it. Turned up to much, it can become as overly opinionated, because they see themselves as being very clear. Again, they come across as being,
It's like, yes, I'm organised. I know what has to be done. Can't you?
Yeah, and let's get on with it. When you're decisive, there is not a lot of room to move in a way.
Not a lot of scope is there, for hearing other people's opinions or alternative views.
And notice when we talk about this, like if you have judging your preference and thinking in your preference and extrovert, there's a whole dynamic that comes to play with that. So let's have a look at another aspect of judging. A really well-developed type bring a plan. They bring a plan to a situation, and everyone loves a plan because there's a focus to it. Yeah. Now, turned up too much, it can become controlling. Here's my plan, and we're going to do it like this. Yeah. So there has to be some agreement, obviously, but this is what an underdeveloped judger could look like.
And that leads me to asking people to think about, so if you do have judging and you can see some of those underdeveloped areas coming out in your personality, look at the opposite, so the opposite to judging is perceiving. So perceiving, some of the well-developed preference characteristics of perceivers is that they're inquisitive, they're questioners, and they're really curious, and that's one of the brilliant aspects about perceivers is that they're always digging, and it's great. It can just, but turned up too much, it can look like they're being indecisive because there are just so many questions that they want to ask. Oh, which one next and what now? And so that is the opportunity, is to have a little bit of discernment actually with the questions that you are asking. And so again, the perceivers, the strength is that they bring options to a situation. Again, that can look like procrastination if turned up too much. It's like, I've got so many options available to me. There's this one, that one, and that one. Again, a little bit of discernment, you can narrow down the options that you are so good at coming up with. So that is perceiving. So the other, did you want to say something, Jen?
Oh, no. So the opposite to that is that bringing options and procrastination.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so
I've just got something about, how you can actually use this template.
Yes, yeah.
So if you wanted to use this template in a team building environment with your team, for those who have done the Myers-Briggs, if you haven't, give us a call and we can run a session with you. So, you could use this template. So one of the ways that you could do it is just give it to everyone and ask them to spend some time reflecting and rate themselves in these areas, like 1 to 10, or give an example of where their well-developed types are being used in the team environment. If you have a really strong, trusting relationship in a team, you can do the flip side, because people are doing their own self-assessment as well. And then you can take each element and just have a discussion around that. So again, you're communicating, you're developing clearer relationships, you're getting, I suppose, more understanding of when the team is on track and off track.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that if you aren't particularly familiar with the Myers-Briggs, or you're not really comfortable running a session as a team leader, you could just start with introversion, extroversion, and just get everybody around the table to talk about, yes, my preference is extroversion, and sometimes I do see that people see me as superficial. What's really going on for me is X and Y. So it's almost like getting them to explain or an introversion looking like they're withdrawn and secretive. They could be saying, actually, no, I'm just deep in thought.
Yeah.
But people see me as being secretive. And for the extra, or for the people of the opposite type, it becomes an aha moment, because we're actually getting the reason why this might be coming across.
Context, that's right. So one of the things I want to share with you about the difference between an extrovert and an introvert. So an extrovert has a fear of FOMO, fear of missing out. And an introvert has a phobia, fear of being included.
I love it. Yeah. So let's finish on that note. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll be talking to you soon.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. While you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts on Air Podcast Network.